Hi, I'm Adam Geis.
I'm David Lurch.
We're hosts of the EdTech Distilled podcast, which is a part of the Education Podcast Network.
Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Teaching While Queer is a podcast for 2S LGBTQ+ educational professionals to share their experiences in academia. Hi, I'm your host, Brian Stanton, a theater pedagogue and educator in New York City, and my goal is to share stories from around the world from 2S LGBTQ+ educators. I hope you enjoy Teaching While Queer. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Teaching While Queer. I am your host, Brian Stanton. My pronouns are he, they. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Julio Carpio. Hi, Julio. How you doing?
Hi, Brian. Again, Julio Carpio. My pronouns are also he, they.
I'm so glad that you're here. You just told me before this call that you're a listener, so I'm glad to have you on the show.
I'm excited to be included, I discovered the podcast over Instagram a little bit ago, and I was just like, great, something to do while I'm reading.
I love it. I was like, podcasts are always like my commute go-to. So I love them, whether I'm driving or on the train or whatever. I'm just like, podcast time. It's like my moment. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Okay, so I am a queer, non-binary, Latinx, or Latina, however you choose to swing on that spectrum, teacher. I've been teaching, this is my third year, and prior to that, I was a college professor, nothing fancy, teaching college writing a couple times a semester. It was a sweet gig, but I didn't have benefits, so I needed something more stable.
Fair enough. That adjunct life. So you were teaching college writing, and what do you teach now at the high school level?
Middle school. I teach
middle school.
ELA. I'm currently teaching 7th grade.
Perfect. So you stayed within that writing realm.
Mm-hmm.
And let's take a trip back in time. What was school like for you growing up as a queer youth?
Oh, Jesus. Okay. So I grew up in Miami, so completely different experience probably from where I'm currently teaching, which is in Syracuse, New York. So my childhood growing up, I was the first out anything kid. At the moment, it was bi, and then I took the bridge from bi to gay, and then rode it all the way to college. I got bullied a lot. I got called basically every name in the book, and I went through a lot of suffering, I guess you can say. But I paved the way for a lot of my friend group, which were also young, queer, Latinx people, to come out and embrace who they are as well. So I don't regret it, but it was a lot of strife,
Yeah, I get that. As a youth, I was also I wasn't out by choice, but I was outed, but I was also the one for a long time. And then by my senior year, there were several. And then 5 years later, there were a whole bunch more. And so I get that it feels, it's a lot, and it's no regrets, but it was definitely a journey. So I feel that with you. How do you feel about what's going on with Florida now? I mean, your experience was before all this. So what's your thought on that?
I mean, I can say a lot of different things about Florida. I will never go back. Now that I'm teaching, I will never go back. The no union, the don't say gay. There's a million different reasons not to go back to Florida. First and foremost, it's not a good place to be a teacher.
No.
Let alone a gay or queer or non-binary, whatever. Any kind of teacher that's not cis-het, white, you're screwed, frankly.
Yeah, honestly, I was feeling that same thing about Texas, and it's funny because Texas likes to pretend that it's some beacon of conservatism, but like they're literally just copying Florida's playbook right now. So like they're not even being original. I can tell you what's going to happen on the Texas legislature next year by watching Florida legislator this year.
Oh my God.
It's wild.
It's pretty painful, especially because I have a lot of family there still, and they're constantly nagging me like, oh, you should come back. Things are great. You can sleep on my couch. You can do this. You can do that. I'm just like, I love you all so much, but I can't like put that part of myself away.
Yeah, I'm even one of those people who like I am boycotting events that happen in Florida. Like
Yeah,
there are lots of
makes sense.
educational conferences and whatnot that were hosted in Florida this year, and I was like, nope, absolutely not. I'm not going to spend my money there. I am a Disney person, and I won't go back to Disney World until they kind of get their legislator in line. It's wild. And to each their own. That's the great thing about life. You can make your own decisions on what you want to do with your money. Like, yay, welcome to freedom to that extent. So at working with the middle school group, do you find yourself working with a lot of queer students?
So like I said, I've only been teaching for a few years. I work in a very, I'm trying to say this like as nicely as possible because, you know, stuff matters. Underserved area. And they have a lot of different things going on. I feel like queerness is maybe one of like the million other things that they're juggling at once. I've seen some very, very interesting like cases of kids that are like baby gays or whatever, but for the most part, they have so many other like mental, socioeconomic, physical, whatever things going on, immigration, even like language acquisition, disability, or what have you. There's so many other things going on that their sexuality or gender identity doesn't tend to come up as often because they have so many other like risk factors, I guess.
That is so interesting because I think something that you brought up there kind of is a lesson that the rest of the world needs to take, in that the sexuality and gender identity doesn't always have to come up.
Right.
Like it doesn't always have to be the hot topic. You could literally be another person and dealing with so many other things. That why is it that we're constantly having these conversations about sexuality and gender?
Yeah, exactly. My kids are very multifaceted. They're survivors. They're fighters. But the ones that have like disclosed to me like, oh, I identify as this or my pronouns are that, I'm just like, I feel so much anguish and pain for you because your life is going to be so much harder, and it's already so difficult and so painful and so isolating. And again, these are COVID kids, you know, so they have a bunch of other things going on already. The odds are stacked against them, and then some of them are queer, or I have a child. I guess I can't, you know, FERPA or whatever. I can't talk too much about it, but
yeah.
He identifies as Demi, and I'm just like, whoa, that's a different one. Like I had some kids tell me, oh, I'm bi, or I like a girl, I identify as a girl. I don't know what that means, and we've talked about that kind of stuff, but for the most part, they ask me for like life advice that's completely unrelated to gender or sexuality issues because queerness is unfortunately not a priority for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that your experience as a queer youth kind of influences how you interact with people as a queer teacher now?
Oh, absolutely. I would say that my experience informs my outlook on things, and it also, I think, gives me kind of an edge that other people don't have because not everybody comes from I guess I can say a not so well-off background. Like my Miami upbringing wasn't exactly the easiest either, but in no way does it compare to what my students are going through here. But I have just a little bit of a bridge to them, and that gives them the buy-in they need to tell me things. It's very like humbling to have a kid like, oh, can I come in? Can I stay after for a couple minutes? Can we talk? Can I have lunch with you in your room or whatever? And they tell me these like really, really heart-wrenching stories. And I just have to sit there with my jaw, like trying to keep it closed because I don't know what the heck else to say.
Yeah, I can see that. I've had situations like that in my classroom as well. The school that I worked for when I first started teaching was in an affluent area, but it like had a huge poverty gap, like massive. People with millions of dollars versus people living on the street. And so like when you get those stories from students who are in a much worse off place than you are as a teacher,
Right.
which is also like not great. And so when you get these stories from students who are in a much worse place, and you're like, gosh, you are 14 or whatever, and you're having to deal with all these things, and sometimes the life advice that they're asking for, it's like, I have no frame of reference on how to help you with this because it could be completely out of your wheelhouse.
Yeah, that's literally it. I'm constantly like drawing straws at how I'm gonna address the things that they say or the things that they ask me because sometimes I don't have an answer. I started the year with this like activity where it's like, oh, ask a teacher any question. And I thought they would ask like about me. And some of them did. They were like, oh, it's like to be gay, or how did you grow up? What made you decide to become a teacher? Stuff like that. And then the questions got bigger and bigger. And we did this for like a week where every day I would like pick a question out of a box and they stopped being about me and they started being about the world and like how I perceive things and what my opinions are, things that I was just like, wow, these kids they're really like they have their hands on the pulse of what's going on in the world. They are very aware. They might not show it, but they are keen to a lot of different things that sometimes I don't pay attention to.
Yeah. It's funny because I think that I'm of the mind, like I'm in the world of, I don't really access news.
Yeah, no, never.
And so then sometimes my kids will say something that they saw on a TikTok and I'll be like, I'll have to go look that up because I have no idea. And it's just something that kind of like flew across their feed. And so I think it's interesting because like, as a person who like grew up with this technology being created for me or for us, that generation of like, we were the first, right? And we're already starting to detach ourselves from like the central hub of that communication. I think it's interesting. Hopefully, the younger folks will also get to a point where they're like, yeah, I've had enough of this.
It's funny that you say that because I'm like, my phone is on Do Not Disturb right now. I don't want any notifications. I have my Outlook set to away so I don't get any emails or anything from work. And I'm just like, please.
Hold on. This is like a hard boundary that has to be set right now, especially in education, because it's like people want to get a hold of you at all hours and they expect a response. And like that was the only way I got through teaching was putting on the away message, putting on Do Not Disturb. I took email off of my phone. I could still access on my browser if I wanted to, but I took it off of my phone to not give me easy access to it so I wouldn't see a notification. Because these are all things that were like, yes, teachers are salaried, but it doesn't mean we're available 24/7.
Exactly.
And so these are like some hard boundaries as an educator that you need to set to make sure that you have time for yourself. I see these memes recently of like, it's like a stack of grading or whatever, and it's like, I'll do that at home while I'm drinking coffee, and then when you get home, it's like, I'll do that at school, and that's all right. But also, let's get to the point where we don't think we have to take the grading home with us. Like, let's get to a point where we feel confident in being able to do everything at school. And that has nothing to do with teachers needing to, buck it up and get all your work done. It has to do with administrators and the system that is set up being more accessible for teachers to be able to get their work done during their work day.
Yeah, stop giving me meetings. I don't need meetings that can be emails.
Oh God, meetings that are emails is the bane of my
existence. Or like a PD for something that I've been trained on 8 different times already.
Mm-hmm. I really wish that like there was a way to test out of things every year. Like,
Yes.
like could I just test out of this? Can I just go right to the quiz at the end of this PD so I could be
Yeah.
done with it? Because I don't actually need this. In fact, I could lead this training right now. So thank you for this information. You would like to learn about bloodborne pathogens. Let me help you with that.
Literally.
I will absolutely teach this for you. But it's so funny because all that stuff's mandated, right? Like we're mandated to learn these things. And it's like, well, once we learn it, do we have to keep learning it or can we just test? And if there's new things, make a tiny section of new things. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
why are we doing all
One
this?
module.
Like, yes, one singular. That takes 10 minutes, not an hour and a half. Yeah.
That's the worst part. It's the menial thing of having to click through all the videos every summer because I refuse to have them sit in my thing until the day they're due, like my coworkers will. And I'm just like, yo, you're planning and you have the video on in the background. How do you get anything done?
I am one of those people, though. I will not wait till the last minute. I will wait. I won't wait till the last minute. I'll get it done early, but I will definitely turn it on and being like cleaning out my office at school or organizing the theater space, like with it just playing in the background because it has to like do its timed thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll answer the quiz question and go to the next video and I'll, move on to the next section of sorting and cleaning or whatever that I'm preparing to do for the start of the school year. But I definitely am that person that has it on in the background. But I'm also one of those people who hates getting the notifications that I have things. And so I get them done early, so I stop getting notifications.
Yeah.
One thing that everybody should know about me, my anxiety appears in the little red circle on my iPhone. If that red circle appears, I'm like, I have to clear the circle right now, which is why I took my email off of my phone for school.
That is honestly so brilliant. I'm going to do that immediately after we finish because that circle, it drives me insane. Like I have dreams with it sometimes with the number just skyrocketing and I have to somehow find a way to juggle things that are on fire while, there's an electric circuit with my smart board that I have to repair or something and kids are running in and out of the room and there's music playing and for whatever reason I can't find my jacket. Yeah, teacher nightmares are very overwhelming. I didn't know that was a thing until this school year.
Yeah, I have the luxury of having theater teacher nightmares, and so theater teacher nightmares show up as like literally everything that you built fell on top and killed people. Like you built this set and it fell on people, and like that is literally my worst nightmare. Anything that has to do with being overhead, even if I'm following all but because I'm following all of the guidelines and whatnot. Even with all the guidelines followed, I'm like, it's going to fall. It's absolutely going to fall. And it never does. But like in my brain, I'm like, oh, it's going to fall. It's going to fall on somebody until I take it down. And then I'm like, I can breathe. Teacher nightmares. Maybe that'll be a summer school session that I do. Because I was thinking like teaching while queer, summer school, 2-week sessions about stupid topics, teacher nightmares. That'll be one, I think. So, in your short experience, have you ever had to deal with like anti-queer behavior in either your classrooms or in meetings?
Yes, all of the above.
All of the above.
So, I can share this. My first year of teaching, I got sucker punched by a kid and called the F slur.
Sucker punched.
Yeah, like in the gut. Like he did a fake out and boom. This is an audio medium. So the people who aren't watching the video are not getting the gesture.
Of it. This is like, it's an uppercut to the stomach.
It's an uppercut to the stomach
yes.
With like everything the child had and knocked the wind out of me. I fell over. It was very like 1990s novella drama. I like did one of these. I spun downward. I fell like people thought I died. I was just like, what do I do? This child just touched me. I didn't think this was going to happen.
That's wild. What do?
You you stay on the floor, hope the kid goes away, because legally can't do much otherwise. I mean, if I engage, I get in trouble, and if I like don't do anything, the kid doesn't respect me, and I have to deal with the consequences. So we had like a mediation and that kind of thing, and then we became cool. But that first experience really opened my eyes to teaching being a contact sport. This is the thing that I think about all the time, and I tell all of my friends, like, yes, I teach language arts, but my job is still very physical because I have kids in my space constantly.
Yep,
even when
absolutely.
I'm leading a lesson or whatever, like there are kids hugging me or like grabbing things or like playing with my hair or whatever.
Yep, consent and boundaries aren't necessarily, keen at that age yet.
No, they don't respect anything because it's the first time they're around people since, lockdown.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so I went to a conference last March that was in Pleasanton, New York. And so it was basically an invitational conference where they had a bunch of GSAs from different schools around the state come and it was about pride and youth and education and whatnot. And I was talking with some teachers and I'd heard that once you get out of the city, that there are portions of New York that can be incredibly conservative. And so have you had situations where you're dealing with conservative issues, not necessarily from the students, but from parents or administration?
I can't speak to parents or administrator, but other colleagues, absolutely. I definitely had the microaggressions because I was the one of, I
appreciate that term, and I also hate that term, because nothing about it feels micro.
Nothing. It's so passive aggressive in that way, where it's it's a microaggression. You're not really doing it. No, this hurts.
It's when someone's sticks and stones.
Yeah, no,
no.
I mean,
words hurt.
Correct. The HR will say, it's a microaggression. That's still something that should be reported, whatever. And cool, but also, it happens so frequently, people don't do anything about it. It's just the culture, and I don't really appreciate that. I started the school as one of the only queer teachers. I'm still one of the only queer teachers, but now I'm more vocal about things. We have a DEB committee now. I'm a part of that. We're trying to get a GSA started in the school. I'm going to be the staff person for that. I'm sick and tired of just the blatant disregard for queer people, regardless of whether they work with you or you service them as a teacher or educator or whatever. It's disgusting because the pronouns or the misgendering or just the little things of you're a little fruity, you're different, or whatever comment people make. It's not cute. It's not funny. It's very inappropriate and it's demeaning.
Absolutely. As you go on this journey, being an advisor and whatnot for the GSA and kind of expanding the queer representation in your school, I encourage you to look at GLSEN has a lot of great resources for GSAs and also education, resources for educators. And then look at the Pride Works conference. That's the one I mentioned. That's in Westchester County here in New York, and it's in March. And they have a lot of resources, not only for teachers but for students, and really great keynote speakers, and kind of a lot of cool things happening there. So it's at least something local that you might be able to do. I mean, it's not exactly local. It's a long train ride, but
I can try
something that is accessible in a physical realm as opposed to only seeing virtual resources. For any of you who are in upstate New York or Connecticut or whatnot, if you want to come on over. I don't know if I'll be back at the conference this year, but I'm hoping to go because it is actually a short 30-minute drive from where my house is.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, when you live in the Bronx, you can get to the mainland real quick because you're on the mainland. Anywho, so one of the things, you're relatively new to teaching, and one of the things that I always ask is like, what advice would you give to that first year teacher who's going in the classroom and they're unsure about how to be their authentic self, or whether or not they should be their authentic self? What advice would you give that person?
I was parsing like my words, I think, when I answered this question initially a couple times, because I get this a lot. Like, oh, what do you do when you're a queer teacher? Because I have no freaking idea. I've played the game long enough, I think, to know where I fit it into this puzzle, but every school district is different, every building is different, every administration team is going to be different. And I can't tell anybody like, oh, you do this and that's it, because there's no magic right answer. I would say gauge the space that you're in, because not all spaces are safe spaces for queer educators, and you need to realize that. Secondly, I would say make sure you have the contact people for whatever things might happen, either HR or your union or whatever additional supports you may have, either in the building or in the district or whatever, because if and when something goes down, you want to be prepared. You don't want to have to scramble to find these resources when you're also trying to defend yourself or you're suffering through whatever traumas are being brought back up. I would wholeheartedly say read your contract. Find out what rights you have too.
I think that's a big one right there. And there's a lot of, stereotype about how people nowadays just don't read the fine print, as it were. And I'm a huge proponent of that as well. Like, read your contract and know your rights. Because only by doing that will you be able to then enforce your rights.
Yeah, absolutely. Literally. I benefit so much from the fact that we have like a no discrimination policy. Like, I can be as gay and queer and non-binary and unapologetic as I want to. I can be loud and obnoxious. I can be my Spanish self. I can whatever. My pronouns are in my everythings. I have rainbows everywhere in my school, my classroom, outside my classroom, on my ID tags. Like, I'm as gay and non-binary as I can be. And I need that to happen and work for my kids, because I know they don't have positive role models where they go home, if they go home. So I have to put on whatever armor I have to like protect myself, but also be there for them, because they're way more vulnerable than I was at that age.
Absolutely. The other thing I'm wondering is, what would you like to see school communities, and this is like everybody, administration, parents, the general community, teachers, students, what would you like to see school communities do to be more inclusive of 2S LGBTQIA plus people?
There's so many things. Like, the list doesn't end. First things first, like, listen. Listen to the people in the room, the people that are trying, the people that have gone through this stuff, because whatever information you get from a news article or a briefing on whatever media you consume is going to be completely incomparable to firsthand accounts of any kind of homophobia or transphobia or any other kind of just straight up abuse or terror being brought on to queer people. We need allies, we need support, we need friends, we need people in our corner who are willing to take a hit when we can't. I do a lot, but I can't do everything. I can't be a superhero if, my cup is empty. There's too many things going on in the world and in my life for me to be everybody's savior.
Yes, that part right there. You have your own life outside of teaching, and you cannot be everything to everyone all the time. You cannot be the queer Latinx savior to all queer Latinx people in your realm. And I think about that so much, because I feel like when I left my first school, I received all of these messages saying, you were the reason my kid felt safe, and they were not even at my school yet. And I'm like, thank you. But like, that's a lot of responsibility to put on one person. It's the same thing when people tell me like, oh, you could have stayed in Texas and been a part of the solution. I'm like, well, I have my own children to think about, and I have my own life to deal with. And so I think that I, made the right choice for myself.
Yes, literally that part, because I can't be the first everything for these kids in this community. A lot of my students have like admitted like, oh, you're the first gay person or the first queer person, the first non-binary person I've ever met. And yeah, I appreciate that. That's flattering. Thank you for telling me that. But also, broaden your horizons, meet more people, talk to more people. Not everybody should be a monolith.
Yes, that part. That's the stuff that gets me. I'm going to pause for 1 second because my computer does not want to charge.
Oh my God.
Like the phone, it's been plugged in this entire time, but it is not charging. And I'm like, the battery or the charger works because it was literally plugged in just a moment ago. Okay, the magic ding. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn the mic over to you, and you get to be the host of your own little mini interview with me. So take it away, Julio.
Ooh, okay. So this has never happened before. I'm not used to having power, so I'm a teacher.
Be careful what I wish for.
Ooh, okay, so I want to ask you, like, no tea, no shade. I want to know, how do you feel about teacher influencers? Because I see this a lot on my social media feeds, and I'm trying to come up with opinions, and I don't know if I have them yet.
There are some teacher influencers that I really love. And then there are some where it seems more self-serving, and that bothers me. I'm a huge, I have a Teachers Pay Teachers account, and I sell stuff on it now. But for 5 years, I was like, I hate Teachers Pay Teachers. I hate this idea that we're not just sharing knowledge, but I'm, gotta pay some bills, and I totally get that. And so here I am now going against something that I was like against before. But there are some really fantastic teachers, influencers out there that I follow, that I appreciate. And most of the time, the ones that I love are the ones that are providing activism and or information. And it's not all buy this thing or participate in this raffle where you get to like everybody that I'm following, and then also follow everybody I'm following, and you've got to leave a comment, and you've got to like this post, and it's all cisgender white women. And so I think that's where things can get a little bit self-serving. I also think that it's an unrealistic expectation that's being set for teachers out there, because they look at teacher influencers, and the ones that I follow that I think I really love are the ones that show the real side of things too. And it's not just like rainbows and butterflies all the time. And it's not toxic positivity. It's like, man, today is rough. I'm literally sitting in my car on my lunch break just to get away for a bit, just to get some silence. Or today was rough. I just realized that I'm wearing 2 different shoes. And I've literally done that before, where I wore 2 different shoes, and it wasn't until a colleague pointed it out to me that I even realized I had a blue shoe and a black shoe on, and I was like, oh, well, all right then. And I think that teacher influencers can be really fantastic as long as the information isn't just feeding into some sort of money machine. Yeah, you can sell products, but if it's always about your product, then you're not so much influencing so much as you're just a salesperson and a brand.
Oof. Yeah, that's a mic drop, I think.
Oh, thank you. But there are some teacher influencers that I've been trying to get on this podcast. So we might be seeing some teacher influencers, later in the season or something. still poking at their DMs going, hey, remember when we talked about this? And you were like, yeah, I'll come on your podcast. It's time to come on the podcast, folks.
Oh my God, that's exciting. Okay.
Come on the podcast. So,
okay. All right.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I find influencers in general to be an interesting mix because it's like,
It's weird.
I don't exactly know what you do.
Uh-huh.
And then there's like a lot of negativity around it. Like, I saw some sort of viral TikTok about a young woman who's an influencer who's like breaking down because she has to work a 9-to-5 job and is like, I can't even, I want to come home and shower and eat my dinner and sleep. I can't even cook my own meal. I have to order because I'm so tired. And I'm just like, okay, but that's just life. Like,
yeah.
And so I think that where teacher influencers are so intriguing to me is that they are teaching and also influencing, and it's not one or the other. And it's like, I don't know how the heck you do that because that takes so much time.
I think about that a lot too, because I see like the videos of like people setting up their classrooms or, oh, look at this new tip or my outfit of the day, whatever. And I'm just like, how do you have this much time alone in your classroom uninterrupted? Because there are constantly people bombarding me for any little thing at my school. I don't get a second of my planning time alone.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I used to turn the lights off in my classrooms because I worked in a black box. So if the lights are off and it's a black room, nobody can see you.
Oh my God.
And so I used to turn the lights off during my planning period and just like sit in the silence as like a self-care tool. So those of you out there, if you are friends with a theater teacher and you have a black box on your campus, go sit in the dark in the theater. It is life-changing. It is definitely like a moment of zen that you need. But always do it with permission, and you better be friends with that theater teacher, because if you just waltz into their room and try to sit in the dark, they're gonna like pull a fake prop on you or something and be like, who are you God. And why are you in my space? We are very wonderful. Protective of our space. So
that's understandable too, because it's basically your classroom.
It's my classroom. It's all the things. It's my sewing room. It's my building room. It's like all the things. So, well, Julio, I've really enjoyed talking with you today, and I'm so glad that I got to have you on the podcast, especially because you have been an enthusiastic listener.
Yes, of course.
All right, everyone. I hope that you also enjoyed the podcast at home. Have a great day.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Teaching While Queer. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Leave a review, and that would help out tremendously. You can also support the podcast by going to www.teachingwhilequeer.com and hit support the show. Thanks so much, and have a great day.